The reality we live in can be a very strange place. Most of the time, fact being stranger than fiction. How will we ever start to understand this reality we live in unless we question everything? Join me and a guest as we unravel the mysteries of this reality, one topic at a time. This is Inquiries of Reality with Shayn Jones.
What is up, Inquirers, and welcome to the expanse of deep open-minded conversation. I'm the one they call Shayn, and today for you guys, I have Heidi Luv from the Unfiltered Rise podcast, here to share her firsthand accounts of what's really going on behind the scenes of Mormonism and its true, deep, occult ties. And this one will actually be the very first episode that you guys will be able to catch an extended version of it on the Patreon, diving into a little bit something different. Not going to be diving into the Mormonism for the after show, but we will definitely be diving into some paranormal experiences. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, you guys can go and check out that on the Patreon. And the goal is I'm going to start producing at least one extended episode for you guys a week. So if you guys might be interested in that, again, you guys will exclusively be able to catch it over there on the Patreon. But before we get into this awesome show, of course, just got a quick couple of news and updates. First and foremost, for anybody that didn't catch it on the last episode, I did end up closing down the Discord. I wanted to be able to focus on some other stuff, so such as the things that I would like to focus on. I did create a Twitch account, so you guys will be able to catch the show live on YouTube and on Twitch now. I'm going to start trying to push into that range, because I originally remembered why I got rid of the Discord in the first place. Just a lot to deal with, and I want to do some more behind the scenes stuff. And then the next news and update is that the t-shirt giveaway is still going on. I have changed it up just a little bit. There's a little bit less questions to the survey. Originally it was 10 questions, now it's 8. So if anybody wants to slide in and possibly win a free t-shirt of their choice off of the Open Minds Media merch store, you guys can definitely go and check out that survey. It's all your guys' thoughts and opinions to help the show grow. So anything you guys do towards that, I greatly appreciate. And the last bit of news and updates is that August 7th will be the next time you guys will be able to catch Bizarre Inquiries live at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the YouTube and the Twitch. So if anybody has any questions, clips, articles that they would like to submit for that, make sure you guys get it to us before then. But if not, we will, of course, pass it on to the next show. And if anybody is interested in supporting the show, there's a couple of awesome ways that you can do it. First and foremost, you guys can go and follow the show on Instagram and Facebook. You guys can go and check out the Patreon with 2 tiers available, ad-free / early access and full access. You guys could also go and check out the merch store, where t-shirts are just $15.68 plus shipping. You guys can leave a review. You guys can share the show. You guys can catch live shows on the OMM YouTube and Twitch channels. You guys could even potentially donate to the show if you guys think it has value. I would greatly, greatly appreciate it. You guys can even check out the affiliate links, which there are some additional discounts and credits available if you guys want to go and check that out. And the last way that you guys can support my work as a whole, if you guys are interested, and possibly having another podcast to listen to get you through your work week, is by going and checking out my other show, Bizarre Encounters with Shayn Orin. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available off of the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And before we get into the show, if anyone is interested in being a guest on the show, sharing their experiences or encounters, or contacting me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourealitypodcast@outlook.com, or you guys can call or text the Open Minds Media hotline 24/7. That number is 313-364-1551. And if you happen to miss that, it is available down in the show notes. And with that, let's get into the show. And today with me, I have Heidi Luv from the Unfiltered Rise podcast. How is it going today?
I'm doing great. I've had a great pre-show chatting with you. We definitely think a lot alike, so that's been fun, and I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, talk about a good conversation that you kind of wish that you record a lot of the time. We ended up talking for almost an hour before we even started the show. So anybody that is popping into the lives, we do apologize for a little bit of the delay, but we're having a good conversation. So you can't really cut those ones off.
Exactly. Not when it's bringing in the heat, right? We were serious. And you don't always get people like that either. It's like you can't have that conversation with everyone. So, yeah.
Yeah, you definitely, once you find somebody from your tribe, you try to gravitate towards it. Because especially today now, it's like there's so many different divisions within people that even within groups that think the same, there's still division within that. So if you find somebody that kind of fits your thinking, like you tend to stick with it a lot more than you would in the past. Because even within that, I mean, people aren't as willing to have conversations about things, even if they are within the same group, because there's just so much split and division. It's not just like, oh, here's this group, here's that group anymore. It's like, oh, here's this group with a million factions, and then here's that group with a million different factions.
Because everyone is offended all the time. That's the problem. So
ain't that the truth on both sides? I mean, people try to pretend like they're not, but both sides get just as equally offended. It's that hard running thing where everybody wants freedom of speech, but then they don't like what the other side has to say. So it's like, if you're going to honor freedom of speech, you kind of have to look at it both ways and use the same justification that if it's something you don't want to hear, just don't listen to it. You can't silence the other person just because you don't want to hear it.
Well, and I always say, like, you can always learn something from anyone, even if they're wrong. And you can just, kind of like what you do on social media. If you don't like it, scroll past. In your mind, you can do that. I promise you guys can. Right? Anyway.
So I guess before we go too far off into another total side tangent, which I know we will definitely do because we had a pretty good round of doing that before we even started the show. For anybody that may not be familiar with who you are and what exactly the Unfiltered Rise podcast is, before we get into the nitty gritty of the conversation, of course, why don't you let them know a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your show?
Awesome. Well, thank you for inviting me. I am Heidi Luv. Yes, that's my real name. My parents were raging hippies. And so that was fun. But of the Unfiltered Rise podcast, I also do a little brand new project, a solo one called Lucidity, because sometimes I apparently have to talk to myself, and I figured, why not record it? It's still on my main page. And I talk about, I'm an ex-Mormon. I do live in Utah. I am a pioneer heritage born in Mormon person that got out. And so that doesn't happen very often. There's jokes like when I said Mormon royalty on one show. No, I mean, like, there's royal bloodlines that we're trying to figure out how and why they fit into Mormonism and why these people ended up in Utah. So that's kind of a weird little tangent that I go down. I do a lot of different work. I love conspiracies. To be honest, I think I'm just male-brained. I don't know.
Well, it's one of those things that once you open the gate, then it kind of just eventually falls into everything else. And especially if you grow up in a situation where you kind of get introduced into these occult practices, into these earlier traumas way earlier, then you tend to become more aware of other people, what they're doing, what their actions might actually be becoming. It's the same sense of, like, even with basic trauma, a lot of the conspiracy theorists in general come from families that either had something traumatic that happened, or at the simplest, it was just, they didn't have necessarily the best relationship with their parents. So they kind of learned to question authority, not necessarily in a bad way, like most people try to view it, but rather just understand why the authority wants them to do what they want them to do. And once you start thinking like that, it's one of those things that you can never undo. You can't just turn it off one day. And especially if you're raised in that, it's like your brain gets reprocessed to think about things that way. And again, it just spirals down from there. You start off with whatever's closest to you, and then you eventually get to this point where you're just like, all right, the entire world is a stage and we're all screwed.
That is actually true. And I think you're 100% right on multiple things there, because I'm always like, wait, that wouldn't have mattered to me before, like, my whole paradigm shifted. I just wanted to watch the Kardashians and buy a new purse. But, like, then everything, like, completely changed. And now I buy a ton of books and I see, like, completely different light on almost my whole entire life, which is weird. It's just weird.
Yeah, even me, same here. It's like you stop caring as much about, like, material things, and it more so becomes like this grasp for, like, information, where it's like, I want to get physical copies of books because, who knows what might be changed. Like, even stuff on the internet, you buy a physical copy of a book now versus 20 years ago, and who knows what could potentially be altered in it. So it's like, I kind of not necessarily materialistic by any means, but I rather more so got into this idea of like trying to conserve like information as much as possible. So, instead of buying like, oh, I want to buy the brand new Nike shirt or the brand new pair of Nike shoes. It's like, all right, well, here's this weird old occult book that looks like they're probably going to pull it out of prints pretty soon. Maybe I should get this before it's something that you can never access as information again because it's purposely going to be scrubbed from the internet, which going into another whole side tangent, I'm still pretty convinced that part of the Mandela effect is a psyop to see what they can erase off the internet and what potentially people will start to think if things are altered and changed. So it's one of those things that once you start seeing things like we mentioned before, you can't unsee it. And then you're just like, all right, give me all the books I can get. Give me all the documentaries I can get. Anything that I can have to myself that nobody else can alter or touch. Like, that's what I want.
Maybe even to your point, to see who isn't erasable, right? That's a part that I think about often. I'm like, okay, are they just really testing the people that didn't buy it? You know what I mean? Like, and then they probably follow us all around. That's that's probably my guess. I don't know for sure, but just saying.
And I'm still pretty convinced that, they talk about the whole like watching aspect of people. And I don't think it's literally like there's some dude from the NSA that's literally sitting there listening to every single podcast you do. Like, what's this guy talking about? What's he listening to? I think it's a matter of like, they're definitely watching anybody that's doing podcasts, that's talking out about this type of stuff. But they're probably watching you through like AI algorithms, things like that, where if there's like keywords, key phrases, then maybe they'll kind of keep a little bit more of an eye on you. But overall, I think everybody's kind of being watched to a certain extent. And I talked about this with Charlie that, you talk about the whole new age idea of like psyops. And, usually you'd have the idea that, if you were going to make like a sleeper agent, you'd have to take them, you do all this mental brainwashing, you do all this type of stuff. And then it would be like later on in life, like you say this phrase and it would spark them up to do something. Now we've gotten to a point where I think that they create these like profiles on people. Again, not themselves, but the algorithms create profiles on people depending on what their search is, what they look up, what type of people they talk to, all of this type of shit. And once they have this person that's pinged enough boxes, they go, all right, we could potentially use this person. And then that's when you start seeing things like, it totally disappeared, but they were trying to say that there was this whole terrorist attack that was supposedly going to happen in Michigan. It was actually Warren, like right near like my area, where there's this kid who was going to blow up. I think it was like a plant or something like that, but they try to make it sound like it was ISIS. It was ISIS. It was ISIS. And then you start looking into the background of it and you're like, all right, so you got CIA that came in and talked to this kid on the internet, taught him how to make rounds, taught him how to make explosives, threw a drone over this building, claimed that they were ISIS. So this kid thought he was a member of ISIS. And then as soon as he went to attack, they flew in, said, boom, we saved the day. It's like, all right, so you want to label this as a terrorist attack. You want to label this as an ISIS attack, but you were ISIS in this situation. And there wouldn't have been an attack if you weren't inciting this kid to do it in the first place. So talk about a new generation of sleeper agents here.
Wow. Well, and they can make anything. Like, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, the world's a stage and they can make that stage play anything they want. And they are all in it together. I think it's funny when they're like, oh, and a new world order might come. And I'm like, oh, you're late to the party. That happened. Sorry.
They've been saying that for like 10 years now openly. Remember when that was like a secret? And now it's like, how many videos do you see a politician saying, oh yeah, we must bring in the new world order. No big deal over here.
Oh, yeah. And guess what they use for that big time is religion. So that's going to tie right back into where we go with this. And that's why I think it's really important for people to understand a little bit about, the whole way the Mormons work. And people always say, well, who cares about the Mormons anyway? Like, that's dumb or whatever, because they're nice people. I'm like, sure. Well, the president and prophet, seer, and revelator of the church is a Skull and Bones member of the chapter here in Utah that was set up by the original founders that were Mormon. So, don't tell me what is and isn't, because I've studied it and I bring the slides to prove it, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. As an ex-Mormon and being one my whole life until basically about 15 years ago, I know what I would have said to somebody like me back then. So I was like, okay, well, what can I really do to show people for real then? What can I do about this? Slides. That's the only way I could figure it out. Because I'm like, okay, we've got all this stuff and, you have to be able to show it. You just do. And I mean, how else are you going to get to some people? But I try not to black pill people unless they're at that level already. Just because, and you're going to see a bunch of screens right there until I minimize here. I wanted to show you some of these because it is really interesting, some of the stuff that we bring to the table as ex-Mormons that they hide and everything's obfuscated. And then, It's easy, super easy to say, oh, well, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. Well, how do you know if you never look into it? Because they're the nicest people. Well, guess what? So was Ted Bundy. Ask his neighbors. So,
I mean, it's a reoccurring thing that you see with a lot of these religions, that they give off this idea that they're one thing, but they have something totally different going on behind the scenes. And that's something that's falling into this whole a little bit more modern thing with I don't want to throw any names and get pulled off of YouTube right away, but it's an idea that they hide like within the group, like the general idea of the group thinks that they're following this general religion. But when you start looking into the fine-tuned details of it, you start looking into the specific sects of it, then you start realizing that it's this whole pyramid scheme, just like the Freemasons work, that the ones at the top understand the true occultism and all of the practices that they're really doing, and everybody else is a giant pyramid that becomes the buffer. That's the same thing with, again, going into like the whole Jewish hate thing. It's not them as a whole entire thing. It's these elite group up at the top that's hiding underneath that facade of everybody else. So you can't point them out because it looks like you're pointing out the entire group. And that's the same thing that happens with the Mormons, for example. You try to point out a specific group doing something, and everybody's like, oh, you're pointing at all of us. It's
just
hiding
hate
amongst
us.
the group.
Yeah. You just hate us. Why do you hate Mormons? You can leave Mormonism, but you can't leave it alone. That's a favorite saying of the ex-Mormon, people. They like to point at us and say, but it's because of the fact that they hide so much that I speak out. Really, if people want to go and practice magic or be an occultist or do whatever you want to do, as long as you're not hurting other people, children, animals, do what you want to do. But let's not lie to people like me or my grandma that believed in this. Everybody that knows a Mormon always says you're picking on them, they're such good people, and I'm like, yeah, but they don't understand what they're doing. And I think the best way to explain that is, everybody knows, like a lot of people know the word porch mason. Well, we got porch Mormons and they're Masons anyway, so it's a whole thing. So
hold on tight, guys, we'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show.
As to that, I would like to definitely add with this first slide, we got to get into a little bit about the history of Joseph Smith, the founder of the church, to even understand, like, what is his worldview? Why does he think the way he does? And what really happened? Was he high on mushrooms? Was he just crazy? Was he lying? I don't think any of that. I think a combination of multiple things. I think he might have been high, sure. But do I think he was high for a purpose, doing rituals and summoning things? I can prove it. So, it's kind of interesting when we hear, I don't know, have you ever heard the story of Mormonism in general, like the generalized version?
Yeah, I've heard like the general version. I had somebody come on a long time ago that was kind of talking about a little bit of the behind the scenes of Mormonism, but he had some family that was still involved, so he didn't want to get too far into it. But the root of what I could get into it was the whole aspect of, I guess you could say, like, some of the elders in the group having some relations with some of the younger ones in the group, and him also being one, and him kind of not seeing the behind the scenes, but believing that it was linked to some occult practices and trauma and rituals. But he kind of had like a general layover a while ago. But for anybody that may not have listened to that episode, always good to recover some stuff to give them a base of foundation.
And the true story from the church's perspective is much different than the reality of history, which I bring because I like to research things. So the basic understanding of the church is that, Joseph was a farm boy. He couldn't read or write that well. He wasn't very smart. Their family hailed from, the burned over district, and this is their story. Well, that's not really the story. And the funny thing is they're huge genealogists, and you can find the story. It's readily easy to find, but they just like kind of chucked it out the window and started over with just his parents and said, oh, we don't know where they hail from. Well, we do. And it makes a difference. And if you need me, I can't see you when the slides are up. So just like tell me, or if you want to ask a question, it doesn't derail me, because this is like my life for a long time. So.
I won't try to interject in too hard, but I'll pop in if I got any questions or anything.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me ever. So Samuel Smith was originally one of his great-great-grandpas, and he was a selectman, which is a very high up part of town, basically like a mayor. And he was a selectman of Topsfield, Massachusetts, near Salem. Well, the problem is, Mormons are very patriotic and typically, and, it's strange to me that they were chucking this story out about Captain Samuel Smith being the ringleader of the Boston Tea Party and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's very strange. Like, why would they not want this as part of history? He's also in the Society of Cincinnati. And these things are strange. I mean, why wouldn't they want to say, oh, this happened? Well, that's because his dad, another Samuel Smith, in 1666, that Samuel the Senior, was involved in the Inquisition, and he was pretty much responsible for the hanging of a witch named Mary Easty. And so they want to pull away from that as much as they can, because while, it looks good, I guess, on paper that he was the accuser, also methinks you protest too much. So I think the church just kind of wanted it chucked out because there's some woo-woo stuff involved with Mormonism. And, we're going to talk about that. So also we've got, Joseph Smith. This Samuel Smith had a son and he named him Azazel. It's not Azazel, but it's a little weird.
Potato, right?
Yeah,
Tomato.
yeah. I was like, what is this guy? This is weird. And I think sometimes they add an H to this just to make it look a little better. But, these people, this is his mom. She wrote some memoirs, which are really important when we get to the next slide. And, all these people are supposedly, like I said, not learned people, just working farm work, blah, blah, blah. No, she was a lay midwife. She was actually pretty smart herself. And her husband was a teacher and came from that elect family that I showed you from Topsfield. So that's just nonsense. Also, just for people to know, like Joseph Smith was studying Hebrew with a tutor that was Jewish when all of this, later on, right before he passed away, and was martyred basically. But, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if you can't write in English to try and write Hebrew. It's pretty difficult. So that's a little silly.
You start looking into the times too of just like who could actually read, who could actually write. And it was primarily men in general. So just off the fact that she was a woman who was able to read and write too, kind of shows some validity to, how intelligent she actually was. She wasn't just some standard, farmer. Otherwise, generally women around that time, didn't know how to read and write. That's why a lot of people, they would go to church and they couldn't read the words, which is why they would rely on the priest and everybody to basically tell them the message of what the word said. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. And these people had a magical upbringing. And this lady writes, in her memoirs, and this is actual manuscript at the Images, their church history library in Salt Lake City. And they say this is taken out of context, but I'm just going to read this little tiny piece. Let not my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season that we stopped our labor and win it trying to win the faculty of a brack, drawing magic circles, or soothsaying to the neglect of all kinds of business. Oh, that's a handful. Okay, so we're talking about a lot there when we're talking about the faculty of a brack. We're talking about abraxas. We're talking about a brack, like abracadabra. We're talking about magic, and they will blow this off and call this folk magic. Folk magic is not what was going on there, and I can show you guys why I know so. So we get into the actual story of Joseph Smith, and he's out trying to figure out what church to join, and he goes out into a grove to pray, and he's overcome with a fit of darkness. I used to say he passed out, but I'm going to quote it as it actually is stated. Problem with this whole thing is there's 4 to 6 accounts, but we're going to go with the church narrative. So he sees a light, and it helps him overcome this fit of darkness. And he says it's God the Father and the Son. And they say, don't join any of them because we're going to show you the true church. And so you're going to help build it. And so they talk to him about having this coming up angelic vision and meeting with Moroni. And so Moroni is the little trumpet guy on top of the temples. And this gets interesting also. There's multiple accounts of this version. I like the account where he had a slit bloody throat, but we're going to go with the church's narrative. So that's fun. Um, Nevertheless, we are having this guy come and talk to him, and he's supposed to be an angel, but angels never lived on the earth, unless I'm incorrect. But I think I'm right, and we're
my
not.
assumption would be that you're correct.
Right. We're not angels. We don't become angels. We become like the angels when we pass away, is what it says. But this is a guy that once lived on the earth, and he used to be a Native American, but now he's extra white and delightsome because I don't know why. Apparently, that's what happens. And so the Mormon church used to actually say it happened and that everybody would be returned to whiteness when they pass away. But we'll leave that alone. That's a topic for another day. However, it's interesting that we know now he is talking to an entity. I mean, honestly, that's not an angel. If you've died and now you're talking to somebody and you're not an angel, this is something different. So we have to look at that when we're talking and saying, okay, how many other people have had visions like this? I can think of a few. My favorite one is Crowley. Like, he goes and he talks to an entity, and it was Awas, and then he wrote a book, and it was the Book of the Law, right? John Dee, he talked to a lot of entities. They wrote a lot of books. It became a lot of things, including, some very interesting things with Templars and all kinds of stuff. But I'm just saying, like, obviously, this has happened time and time again. Same thing with Muhammad. He was also overcome with fits of darkness, and then he would wake up and he would tell these people that followed him around, and they didn't write it down till later because they were non-written people, and it becomes a book and a religion. So this just keeps happening. But in every instance, we know this. It's not for free. So John Dee's angels, we get the wife swapping. Joseph Smith, we get polygamy, polyamory, and multiple other things. In Muhammad's case, we get a 9-year-old bride and polygamy. And with Crowley, we didn't have to work that hard. He was already up to a lot of no good. So, at this point, when you're saying, okay, this is not from God. I don't think God does wife swapping and, pedophilia, but that's fine. Whatever. Right.
I mean, you kind of have to look at the context too, that when you look into these other religion stories and you have these things that come and it basically will say like, oh, I'm going to give you knowledge. You start looking at it from another perspective and you're like, what does that sound like in a different context?
Right.
Kind of sounds like fallen angels, maybe.
And magic, right? This is definitely, channeling something. You think it's an angel because, you just think so, but that's not true necessarily. And this is my big argument. So many people, buy in so many different ways. And I think my hypothesis, at least for me, is pretty unique, where I believe he is really channeling things and speaking to them. Do I think it's an angel? No, I think it's an entity, but nevertheless, it becomes a book. But for all my life, as I was in the church, this scene right here is how I was taught with the Urim and Thummim, that they transcribed the plates that were received after many speakings with the angel and the angel Moroni over years of time. Okay. Always at the same time, always on the fall equinox. And when we get to how he got the plates, it's super interesting. And it didn't have anything to do with, benevolency. We'll get there. But this is how I thought it was and how this all came to pass. But actually, when we get to it, this is actually how everything was done, by blocking out light and using a seer stone. And the books, the plates were actually covered most of the time, as it shows in the photo. And he would tell these scribes what symbol it was. They're very similar to Enochian, and we'll get to there. But these symbols would be translated later after he would see them with his seer stone. And so when I found that out, I thought, I was already out of the church by then. And I was like, that is the South Park episode. And that is a lie, because my church told me so. And then we see the prophet, who is 100 years old, prophet, seer, and revelator. Remember those words, because that's going to be important. He pulls this hat out of the cold storage in the tunnels underneath the temple. And no, I'm not kidding. He gets it out of the vault and does a photo shoot with it. And I'm like, oh my gosh, is this actually real? Are you serious right now? Like, this is the real narrative. This is how they're going with this. And yeah, they definitely did. So this is a little compilation drawing of what we really know nowadays, not the studious Joseph, deciphering things with the little glasses. No, it was the seer stone. He had many of them. This parchment holder is important. We'll get to that. And his hat. And so, well, where do you learn to do that, right? Like, that seems weird.
I was say, talk about some more symbolism with going back to the abracadabra, like generic magic stuff. And you got, the hat that looks just like the magician's hat. So there's just some more symbolism within that.
Yeah. And witchcraft, right? Like this. I mean, people can say whatever they want about it. They'll say folk magic, but I'm going to show you it's Solomonic magic. And that is some serious magic. That's not willy nilly. Everybody does it. This isn't like burning sage or some silly thing. This is serious. And to, get to that level where he was able to receive the plates. And this is an account from his neighbor, Willard Chase, who they just say is crazy and they hated them and he made it up. Okay, but here's the thing. Willard Chase gave his statement and it is a true affidavit. Okay, people can go look this up from the Glasslooker trial. And he gave this under oath. That changes things for me. That should change things for a lot of people, knowing at that time that the story he is going to divulge in court that day could put him at risk of being also burned as a witch. It was serious, clearly. And he said that Joseph, after many years of going at the same time in the middle of the night, like 2 to 3 in the morning, every year on the fall equinox, he would go and try to commune with this angel. Well, one year he tried to go and they were like, the angel said, you need to bring your brother the next time and I'll give you the plates finally. Well, there was a problem. His brother died. And so he couldn't bring his brother. And then they run this ad in the paper and they're like, and this is true in the Nauvoo Expositor paper, that they were going to camp by his body, that they were going to dig him up after quite a few weeks because they needed to make sure no one else dug him up because they were just doing their due diligence because people said they dug him up. And that is like the story. I'm not kidding. So everybody jokes that's kind of got the actual knowledge that maybe his brother had a hand in Mormonism. Makes sense when we talk about secret societies like Skull and Bones, right?
And for anybody that may not be familiar with what the basic concept where Skull and Bones comes from, the basic idea was that they were trying to take skulls to communicate with the dead with their skulls, or at least that's the general consensus that we ended up kind of coming to when we covered it on the show. So, you're collecting parts of dead bodies to communicate with the dead. So you're going back into, again, using some more occult magic.
Yes. And some of the people that helped found the original Skull and Bones were actually the family of Mormons. Like, they were very interactive in it. And the only other Skull and Bones society that there is, that I know of, has been sanctioned by that Skull and Bones is the University of Utah's Skull and Bones and Owl and Key instead of Scroll and Key. Their family came and set that up like right after they set the other one up. So it's old. It's actually still going to this day. And that prophet I showed you, he is a Skull and Bones member, as was Bob Bennett from the Mormon Mafia. That's a senator, all kinds of people that have been through this. Now they don't put it out anymore because, people find things. So, but it's interesting.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break. So stay tuned. Now back to the show.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how as soon as something kind of comes to the context, then everybody figures out everybody that's part of the group. Like, we always make jokes about these, like the scariest groups are the ones that you don't know the names of yet because they haven't been infiltrated. But like Skull and Bones is one of those ones that it's like, people are aware of the name now thanks to stuff like podcasts. So like if you're involved in the Skull and Bones, like people are instantly going to have an eye on you.
Probably going to get out there. Yeah. And on top of the fact, like, you can trace the genealogy of these people. Like, they'll say, oh, you don't know that. It was a Taft. Like, yes, we do. It was a Taft Russell that helped set it up. And that name alone, that's a whole nother story. But we definitely are talking about these old, American families that turn into a big situation later. But also the fact that Joseph has all this magical history, all this magical, family history, which we haven't even got 100% into. And he's got this friend named Lumen Walters, like light giver, like Lumen.
Yeah, I was about to point that out.
Yeah, it's too good. And he was a conjurer, reported to have taught Joseph Smith the arts of divining. And so we know he's messing with this stuff. Like, this isn't like I'm guessing or maybe it happened. And I can show you guys like the artifacts, which are fantastic. I mean, this is real. It still exists. This is his seer stone, one of many. And they say this is his favorite, but I don't buy that because there's another one. And also he stole it from his neighbor, Willard Chase. But that's a whole nother one. But there was many other stones. This was the Chase's sister. She also had a seer stone that he borrowed. Whoa, that went crazy. And we also have this one, which is just an artist rendition. And this is the one that I postulate is the most important one, simply because there's never been a photograph taken of it. If you've got an artist rendition, I mean, come on, that's a little much. So
what type of rock or stone are these or mineral are these supposed to be made out of?
I checked into some of that and I didn't see like obsidian or anything on those. I postulate the white one might be quartz, but also somebody was saying that it might be the Herkimer diamond, and that would be also very interesting. But that's why
maybe
I say
opal. Is there ties to opal? Maybe.
I mean, it's possible, but it was so far down. I would wonder if opal would break just because it's so brittle. But I'm not sure. I'm almost betting though that it would be a crystal type property. And he said it worked. I mean, he used it far more than the glasses, the Urim and Thummim, and he said that because it hurt his eyes. So. And then this is the rendition from that whole thing that I was telling you, part of Willard Chase's testimony about another night where they went out digging for treasure because they were known treasure diggers and they were known scryers and they were known, what's that called? With the, not water witching, but it's something similar to that with the little rods.
Oh, the dowsing rods.
So they did all of these things so we're already getting like a little magical basis. The other part of the story they don't bring up other than the fact with a rusty sword, the dad drew this whole sigil of where, they were going to dig to protect them. And this is where these symbols for anybody that studied Solomonic magic will look very similar because they're greater, lesser keys symbols. And then the part they always leave out is that they slit one of the goats, the blackest one, and slit its throat and bled it all over the circle. Does that sound super Christian to you? I mean,
it definitely sounds really, really Christian. Right. What are you talking about?
I mean, maybe the Christian kind where they were just killing everybody, but like not. Did
they make sure it was perfect? Like not one white hair? Because that almost kind of sounds like another group and something else that they're doing, Yeah,
I know about that one. That's for sure. And it just makes you wonder, like, how is it possible that the church hid this for so many years before the internet? Like, they were able to just hide all of this and now they can't. And so people are leaving, not just over this, but other things that they're finding. And they're finding that we've all just been lied to. When you bring up the word hoodwinked, that's a good way to put it. And, Joseph Smith was a master mason. People know this. You can look that up. Actually, the church has come clean about that now and says, yeah, he's a mason. So what? Like, they don't care anymore. Like, they used to deny. Now they don't. And so you can find that. There's like a whole video about it, like on the Welcome to Mormonism page on YouTube. And it's like, so you heard that Mormons might be Masons. And it's like this cheesy video. I'm like, oh, okay. Wow. I never thought I'd live to see the day, but there it is. So they're just trying to fix the things that get out. And this is from that actual case. This is the ticket he got. From the glass looking case. So people can look this up. People can look at the fees. They can look at the affidavit. All of these things are right online. You can totally go find them and it's easy. So, I mean, everything so far that we've talked about doesn't seem too, Christian, technically Christian, to me, but hey, whatever, it's fine. And then we get into something, we bring up the masonry part, but the thing about masonry is they always want to say Scottish Mason or whatever. And I'm like, wait, this doesn't seem like the right timeline. When you look at history, Scottish Masonry would have only been like organized for about 50 years at that point. And that's not a whole long time for it to get over here and spread about and everything else. But something else has, and the skull and bones cloaks that I showed you before, they look real similar to this. And this is a current Martinism order, and Martinism is a very ancient form of Masonry. It is Masons, but they're practicing Masons. And what do they practice? Solomonic magic. Weird. Like, I can't 100% prove this part. I can give you the theory there. I mean, you can only connect so many dots before you go, right. Where would he possibly learn this from? Well, Luhmann Walters had just come back from Paris, and he was a doctor and he was in high society. So yes, he would have had the ability and opportunity to be exposed to this. So yeah, it's not outside the realm of thinking, but many people don't want to say that that's even a possibility. Even the doubters like me, even those heathens like I am, apparently. But also, don't forget, he had that little pouch on, and that is a layman's pouch. And when we're talking about layman's, we know something goes inside of it. And, I've deciphered a lot of these layman's, looking things up and doing due diligence, just researching and trying to understand stuff. And this is this is Solomonic magic, period. These are, now people look at it and they'll see Jehovah on there and they'll be like, oh, that's good, right? Well, there's other things on here going on too. And we're talking about, magic. There's no way to mix words when you're talking about the greater and lesser keys of Solomon. This is the other one. This is the Holiness to the Lord parchment. And all these symbols are straight out of either the Magus, Sibley's Book of Witchcraft, or the Greater and Lesser Keys of Solomon, which would all be considered witchcraft stuff back then, like the demonologia stuff. So, this dumb farm boy is making these. Okay, cool story. It doesn't make any sense. And especially where he's doing calling downs for specific things, which we'll go over on the next one. And they'll try and blame this on his brother, because they'll say, well, the brother went to Dartmouth Indian College, so it was probably him because he was the one that went to school. They don't fit his birth charts, anything. All this stuff means a whole lot when you're getting into, magic. It would fit the person that's got them, and it doesn't fit the brother. It definitely fits Joseph. And so I put the descriptions down here, but we're going to go over a couple on the next slide here. And so people will also say they were just protection sigils. And this is straight from Sibley's Book of Witchcraft. That is on that previous parchment. And it says, whoso beareth this, he'll only fear God. And that's fine. That one's not too woo-woo, right? But this next one right here, whoso beareth this sign, let him fear no foe but God. Whoso beareth this figure about him, all spirits shall do him homage. Not the spirits that are like, this isn't like, I rebuke anything. I'm against this, blah, blah, blah. No, this is about summoning. And then he's got all of these symbols on here, which are, some of them are intelligences. When we are in magical orders and speaking like that, that's usually a demon. So we're going to get to that here soon. Does that mean that every single time? No, I'm just talking about in this context, right? And so he is literally calling down and invoking a lot of things, honestly. And this is the symbol that was on the one layman, the first one, the Jehovah one, and it protects from infection, sudden death, and all this stuff. Well, Joseph was the one that was infected from a young age with typhoid fever. He almost died of it. All this stuff, there's a whole bunch that completely applies to Joseph specifically. So I just don't buy the whole, it was his brother. That just doesn't make any sense. Also, you're going to hear something about Jupiter here soon, and that will make sense to you as well. It fits Joseph far better than his brother, and they try to put it off on him every single time. But
I think it was one of those things, like you said, with the internet, that before the internet, it was probably a lot easier to be able to hide this information. But now with the internet coming out, it's harder to hide it, because you can actually look all this stuff up and you can find all the proof behind it. So I don't know exactly when this, I guess you could call it partially like a conspiracy kind of became a thing, or when people started talking about, oh wait, all this stuff's kind of flipped, but I'm sure the internet age probably played a pretty big role in that.
For sure. And they had an actual historian that wrote a book about this, and it was supposed to be, well, he was a church historian, and it was D. Michael Quinn. He was actually contracted by the church to do all this research, and then he wrote the book and they excommunicated him. So he also lived a different lifestyle. They found out later that he liked the same sex, as him, and whatever. They used that to do it. But I'm telling you, it was more a conspiracy about what he wrote about the church, and they really couldn't get rid of it at that point. So then you get into things like this. Okay, you saw in the parchments about the sign of Jupiter. We have Joseph Smith carrying a Jupiter talisman. This one isn't a conspiracy. His wife wanted this back. She had to identify it as his, and she got it back because of that fact. So Emma actually stated, his wife, that it was one of his most prized possessions, period. And so he kept it with him at all times. The only way he would have known these symbols that are on this talisman are straight from the Magus or the Keys of Solomon. So yeah, there's just no way around the fact that this is a magically practicing family. You just can't lie and say it's not. And this is this Jupiter talisman and what it means. And this exactly says, it defendeth and protecteth those who invoke and cause the spirits to come. That isn't saying somebody else is cursing you or whatever. This is specifically saying he's doing it. So that's interesting,
Look at that familiar symbol up at the top of that too there.
Exactly.
At the top of that circle.
There's a lot going on with these. I mean, I'm telling you. Then we have a magical dagger that was the family's. And let's see, that's not it. And it's a ceremonial knife or an atame, which, anybody in the magical world will know what that means. It's just like a magical dagger that they use for things. But you can't just throw it away and say, oh, it was the brothers. Okay, we're getting into a lot of things here that are way more intricate than that, and the tables don't fit the brother. None of it fits. So this is the copy of it where it shows, which seal is on it. And it also has this intelligence of Mars, which is a demon. He is specifically playing with very scary magic. Solomonic magic is not something you want to mess with unless you are A, braver than me, B, into some very strange things, and C, you better know what you're doing or you're going to open up a whole can of worms. So yeah, not me. But like I said, this is definitely for magic, period. So all of this stuff is in a museum, and it's owned by a private owner that refused to sell them, which I think is hysterical because otherwise it probably would have got buried. So
yeah, 100%.
Love it. And then this, I always like to bring up too. It continued even after Joseph's death. The magic continues on to the next prophet because, like the brother that they dug up, they also dug up the prophet and his other brother. And the wood that had been all putrid and the bodies rotting in, they made these awesome canes with, and then they gave them to the next prophet and other people that were important in the church. And just in case you didn't have enough yucky, squishy, gross stuff on it, they also had a knob full of the hair of them. And this is literally after digging up their corpses.
See, that already goes into a whole other non-Christian viewpoint of you don't dig up a dead body, you don't mess with a dead body. So just right off of there, you instantly are going into, oh, you got some necromancy going on.
Absolutely. Well, and I mean, the Mormon church messes around with, rites for the dead constantly, which we'll get into. But I mean, it doesn't make any sense if you, why would you do that? Why would you want the rotted wood? That doesn't even make any sense unless you know something, right, about magic and you knew what kind of power that would give you. And then on top of that fact, to know, look, not every wand is a wand. Sometimes people have a staff, like a Gandalf staff or a cane, which all the prophets that were old did have these canes. So
just out of curiosity too, just to throw it in, do you know what type of wood his coffin was made out of by chance?
That I'm not sure. I'm wondering if it said it in the other one. Let's see. I thought it was, I think it might have said oak. Let's see. No,
Oak?
it doesn't say. Oh, wait. Yep. Has 2 oak canes. Yep.
See, is there anything
oak.
linked to occultism with oak by chance
That one
you
I'm
know
not
about?
sure. I know there's a big link with acacia and stuff, or holly, but I'd have to find out. I've never had anybody ask that. I should look that up. That's interesting. Yeah, the fact that it had the gross bloody juices on it just freaked me out. But I totally see where you're going with that, because we know that certain properties definitely have more power than others. So it wouldn't surprise me at all. And then this one was
apparently
Joseph's staff.
Oak is supposed to signify strength, endurance, wisdom, and the connection to the divine, according to occult.
Okay,
good old Google searching it over here.
Ooh,
so I mean,
good.
definitely could play in a key role for that. So
yeah.
I was wondering if it was going to be made out of like, you know, the magical woods, like Hollywood or something like that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Oak has its own version. But connection to the divine, I feel like that's where the key rule is there, that they're seeing him as divine, and that's their connection to him specifically in their way of communicating with him.
Right. Yeah. And they do very much put him up on a pedestal, of course, and they'll say that that doesn't happen, but it does. And, you know, it's already a situation with the Mormons not believing in the Trinity. They definitely believe in 3 separate beings. And, you know, that is God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost is what they call it. And so they believe God was a man, just like any other, and that with powers and passions, he created Jesus. So just, you can fill in the blanks there. I didn't say that, they did. And so, yeah, powers and passions.
So rather
just
from
like
the
any
view
other man.
from that, it's a non-virgin birth then, to kind of get a little bit more specific.
Yep, exactly. Because they literally say he was created like any other man with powers and passions. And so they also call their God Elohim, which, I mean, you know, if you do some studying, it gets interesting, because that's not a singular word. That's not a single word for a singular person. That's a lot of things. So the Elohim,
is that the same one where you start getting into with like Judaism, that when you start kind of getting into it starts becoming Elohim. Not the single Elohim. So it is referring to the same God then. Yeah,
that's what I say. Of course, they're not going to say that, and then they do deify Joseph. Like, I don't care what they say about that nowadays. When we were young, I mean, it literally says that Joseph Smith will be there in heaven to judge us all. So don't tell me that they're not deifying him. That's a lie. Like, you guys can look that up if you're not sure, because the Mormonism of today has been so whitewashed. A lot of these younger Mormons are like, that's a lie. I've never heard that once in my entire life. Look it up. Like, I'm not saying anything that you can't look up. Look it up and see if I'm wrong. I welcome that. I think that's good. That's how I found out all this stuff, is looking it up. I didn't want to know this stuff either, you know. Actually, most of the information I found from thinking I was going to prove somebody like totally wrong. Like, no, that's crazy. That's crazy. And then, it led into a slideshow, which led into a whole bunch of things. And it'll probably be a book sooner than later. But it's just, you don't expect that. You know, he had a serpent cane when he was alive. This is Joseph's, because he did walk with a limp from that typhoid fever for all of his life.
That face does look pretty draconian too.
Oh,
just to be a little bit more
snake.
Specific on it too.
Yeah. And they call it the serpent staff. So, I mean, I just think that it's weird that they would even say, like, try and go back and forth on it. It just doesn't make a whole lot of sense, you know, but they do. That they'll try and make you believe with your own eyes what you see isn't real, you know. And then when we get to the temple ceremonies, I mean, they're completely based on, I've looked it up, and if you go on Grok and you put in temple ceremony for Mormons, what is it the closest to? It will say the Cult of Mithras. And so I don't know why we're doing Mithraic rites or Freemasonry rites in the temple, when you have to understand this is supposed to be the best day of your life. You are supposed to be, you know, getting your temple endowments or getting married or both on this day. You only go through the temple the first time for yourself. And every time you go after that is for a dead person. And you are literally the proxy of that dead person. So you spoke about necromancy before. We're going to get into some of these rites and how that applies. If you're taking on another's name upon yourself that is passed away, what are you attaching to yourself? Yeah.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to that deep conversation you crave. Bringing it back full circle with that staff that looks a little bit draconian, that kind of gets into this whole idea about that like consciousness transfer thing that you see within, the reptilian type groups, talking about like, they don't actually die. It's just the physical body dies, then it transfers into something else, like the whole thing with the queen transferring into somebody else, if you get into that deep part of the conspiracies with the reptilians and things. But it kind of seems like it's along the same lines.
And what did you say about skull and bones? Where do they believe all your knowledge stays, right? In your skull and your bones, and especially the skull, because they believe it's like your actual memories and stuff stay in the skull, which is why they stole Geronimo's skull and all this weird stuff. So when you're talking about this, and what I know at this point, of course I didn't know it then. One of the passwords has to do with, your sinews and protecting your posterity and your sinews and the blood and sinews and all this weird stuff. And then it makes more sense when you're talking about skull and bones on top of it, like add those together with masonry, and you're probably maybe pretty close to Mormonism. So it's just strange. A lot of this is Masonic rites. The handshakes are very similar. The story in the Garden of Eden is very similar. There's a lot that's the same. Of course, people joke and say Mormonism is masonry for the whole family because they let girls do it. But a lot of this is very similar. And this is a real picture. The one I showed you before was just snapshots. But somebody, shout out, new name Noah, he snuck in with the Google glasses and ripped a big hole in the church's whole thing. And this is out there for anybody to see. I'm not divulging anything that's not readily available for you guys to go look up. I don't feel bad about it because people give me crap because the only people that go to outer darkness in Mormonism, absent from all light, absent from God, absent from anything, is their version of hell. It's outer darkness. It's reserved for murderers of non-innocent people. We'll get into that. And apostates like me. Those are the only two people that go to hell usually.
So the way that you were just kind of stating that, by the way, does that kind of just to bring it full circle with different things, like the whole Judaism idea of like the Goyim, that it's like, oh, you can do whatever the hell you want to anybody that's not part of our group. So it's like they're irrelevant at that point.
100%. The older branches of Mormonism, and I say the top elites of Mormonism to this day, but normal people will say, no, that's not true. They used to call it bleeding the beast. And the FLDS still does this, where they can harm others that are Goyim. You are 100% correct. And they also used to practice blood atonement. And part of the reason why the Native Americans were have you seen the movie Primeval yet? The show, the series?
Oh, I have not seen that. I've had it on my list for a while, but I haven't watched it yet.
When you watch it, there's an even better one on Hulu about Under the Banner of Heaven, and it explains a lot of things in the old ways of the Mormon Church. And you're 100% smack dab on with some of this stuff and the rituals and all of this. Like it does very much present the same exact way. But I don't feel bad about exposing it at this point. People say, "Oh, you're spilling secrets. You can't keep a secret." Look, I didn't know I was going to be initiated into a secret society that day. I was told I needed to do these things to go to heaven, and that's what they tell you. And that you have to go and do this work for other people because they're dead and they didn't get to do it. And that's what I was told. If they would quit lying to people and they want to do this all they want and basically make it like masonry, because something's up when you pledge. Let's be honest. You may not know the whole extent of the whole thing, but that you're getting into a secret society and woo-woo and whatever. Okay, we don't know that as Mormons. We don't get told. Do you know, I didn't know what a Mason was when I went through the temple at all.
I'm 100% sure that's purposeful, because they don't want you to be able to compare the two. It's the matter of controlling your full ideas and thoughts so that you can't connect things into other things. I mean, you catch them young and they don't know anything else, and then it doesn't matter how much true information you shower them with, they're still not going to believe it, Like Yuri
Absolutely.
Bezmenov says. But same thing, you got to catch them young with any of these occult religions, because if you try to bring somebody into this as an adult, unless they're easily manipulable, like such as the people that would be brought into a cult, it's a lot harder to catch members when they're adults.
Well, and not only that, but to your point, you don't want to disappoint your whole family. I'm a generational Mormon. Like, this has been going on since the 1800s in my family. Like, this is not something, well, I don't know exact year that it started up for my family, but they were pioneer Mormons in the handcart movement. So that far back, where, you do get a choice to like leave at some point during this woo woo, and they start chanting. And I was already flipped out because the initiatory part, they do this. They changed it a lot. It used to be you got naked and, oil poured on you and all this whole crazy stuff. And then when I went, I didn't know anything about that. I just had a poncho, and you put your head in it and it's open, and they touch you like on your inner thigh and above your breast. And yes, it's a female, and no, it's not sexual, but I'm telling you guys, like, you are freaked the hell out by the time you get in the next room with your new name and your new underwear and all the things that are happening to you. And by the time you get in there, and then it's quiet and like monodic, and you're just like, it's almost like they're using the trauma of what's going on with you to put you in that trance-like state where they don't use drugs anymore for this.
See, I'm pretty convinced from a lot of the occult stuff that I dived into that there's definitely like a magic component to it, but I definitely think that there's a huge component of it that we deem as magic because we don't have a full understanding of it. And at least from what I've talked to with a lot of people with like this occult trauma, where they break you down psychologically and they start doing all these magic rituals with you and all of this type of thing, like, it seems like it's a master understanding of psychology. That's what the secret science is it's not necessarily all magic, but just knowing how to manipulate somebody's trauma, manipulate somebody's perception into being able to believe whatever you want them to believe. So I definitely think that there's people within the group that, are 100% convinced that they're doing magical practice. And then there's other ones that are just as high up in the group that are viewing it as they're doing occult, or they're doing occult psychology to somebody, and they're messing with their mind, and they don't actually see the magic component to it, but dual perspectives of the same events,
Right.
Just like most things, everything's magic until we have some type of understanding of it. And, I think that one of the big tricks to occultism is the fact that it's just a thousands and thousands and thousands master understanding of psychology, like way more advanced than we could ever even imagine that we are with modern day psychology.
I agree to that to a point, but I do believe they channeled things, and 100% I believe that, because if you look back through the ages, like you said, clear back to Babylon and everything, like, this has been going on for a long time, where other things are speaking to people time and time again. And I truly believe only the upper echelon, the top elite of the elite, get that benefit, where they are a prophet, seer, and revelator of the church. Well, why do you do necromancy anyways? If you look it up in an occult sciences book or whatever, it'll say, so you can know the future for prophet and revelation. Like, it's right there telling you why they're having the Goyim do this stuff. It's because you're charging the house. You are charging the energy, and it's going to someone. It's just not going to you. So of course they want to feed you some dumb story that, it's just so you can learn the handshakes and help your Uncle Bob, who didn't get to go through the temple before he died. And so they're doing all this, and you are literally taking upon yourself hundreds, if not thousands, of names in your lifetime, if you go as much as they want you to go, of dead people, including Hitler. Like, they did Hitler, they did all the Jews, they did Anne Frank. I mean, finally the Jewish church was like, can you cut it out now? And they did for a time, but they started right back up again. And they don't care, and they don't have to have your permission. If you die tomorrow and somebody wants to do your rites, and they're an LDS person and you were in their family, at least like 27th cousin, they'll do it. There's nothing.
See, this is where stuff gets super duper weird. Is I don't know if I'm sure that you have, considering all this stuff that you dive into, but the whole like LDL connection to Skinwalker Ranch, everybody thinks it's like, oh, we're looking for aliens, we're doing this, we're doing that over here. It's like, no, they're trying to do all of this occult practice and they're trying to hide it under the facade of they're doing all of this alien stuff. Like as soon as you start diving into that, you start realizing that every single person that's connected into Skinwalker Ranch is part of the Church of Latter-day Saints.
Absolutely.
And then you start wondering,
Brandon
like, all right,
Fugel.
you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. Why are they just sticking to these basic experiments to try to like prove the phenomenon? It's because they're not. They're just trying to dance around in circles, create revenue so that people are throwing money and time into that area. And then they're also changing what people think is actually happening in that area. I mean, just a huge other weird connection with, you know, if they are theoretically trying to open up portals over there, and they're also doing this thing where they're clearly doing this ritual that almost kind of feels like crossing the abyss, that you're like bringing things back from the dead. It's just this other thing that you see, one, in an occult ritual, and then two, it looks like they're trying to use like modern day science to make a more physical variation of doing the same exact thing.
100%.
And then again, hide it under the facade of it's aliens, you know? Because
well,
even Skinwalker, thanks to that show, you know, everybody's so mind blown on what Skinwalker is. Everybody thinks it's this alien creature. They think it's this, they think it's that. You know, I was lucky enough to have this guy named Shayn Orin on before he deleted all of his accounts. And he was one of the few Navajo that would actually talk about Skinwalkers. And he would talk about what they were exactly. And they were, you know, shamans, medicine men that diverged into going into like evil magics, essentially. So again, full circle with that stuff. You look into what Skinwalkers actually are, and it goes back into this whole occult concept and opening portals and everything else over there. So again, it's like they've even mixed up the idea of what people think a Skinwalker is to try to hide what they're actually doing over there.
Well, and, you know, Utah is known for this type of activity. I mean, Utah, we've got the Four Corners right here. We've got Area 52, which is there's a huge thing that happened like in the time of Nixon, where like they were doing something and like over 26,000 sheep were killed. And they said, okay, you know, it was like chemical warfare or something because they were testing something. No, I'm telling you guys, like there is some weird stuff that goes on here in general, but the church is always in a piece of it, period. And yes, do they make money off the back end of it? Sure do. But also, do I think it helps hide exactly what you said? You know, they can't do this stuff all the time. If they are practicing what I believe they're practicing, which is Martinism, which is a magical form of masonry. And I'm not saying there's not good Martinists. I mean, I'm sure there's people that try to stay to the light side, not the dark side. But regardless, whenever you're messing with something you shouldn't be messing with, it's probably going to have some problems for you in your life. I mean, I wouldn't do it in my personal opinion, but in spring equinox and fall equinox are the two times that they channel. So to your point, it's exactly the perfect like cover. If something weird happens, they can just blame it on the aliens.
You know, on the flip side, they're always blowing stuff up over there. And what does that sound like? You go back to the Suicide Squad and Jack Parsons, and what are they doing? Blowing stuff up in the middle of the desert, trying to open up portals, which is exactly what Skinwalker Ranch is doing. It's the joke 100%. Of like, all they do is blow shit up over there. Like,
Well, and if you research the Nine, you know, and like Howard Hughes, like they all speak about not blowing things up anymore because it rips open portals. So, I mean, he even said like he was absolutely bonkers about it, trying to shut down the AEC and trying to shut down all the bombings in Vegas because of it. And it was under like, oh, it's bad for your health. Well, that's true. But he also was quoted by saying like, there are things that come back when they do that. We can't control it. He was one of the people that had a hangar at Area 51. So, I mean, Hughes knew some stuff, and he was surrounded by what? Mormons. And every time I turn around and I'm researching some woo-woo weirdo, some kind of crazy thing, I don't even mean to sometimes. And the Mormons will be there. I'm like, what is going on with this? Like, it's not that big of a religion, right? It's just not. It's not like a huge religion population. And so why are they always there? And why are they always at the upper echelon of things, period? I mean, and I think it's because they use all of this to their benefit. I really do. And like recognizes like. Crowley was fascinated with Joseph Smith. So
I would say bring it full circle too. Talking about people blowing stuff up in the desert. Talk about Jack Parsons. Who was Jack Parsons' main person that he was obsessed with? Aleister Crowley.
And who did he work for a time? Howard Hughes. So all of this stuff is always in a circle. Every time I research anything, I'm like, holy crap, why does this have anything to do with this? Like when I did the 9, I'm like, why does this have anything to do with, like, we're right back at it. And it's so strange. But this is one of the things that they do in the temple. And look at the purposeful hands. This is called the true order of prayer. And they're going to raise their hands up and down 3 times and say, "Oh God, hear the words of my mouth." They used to say Pele El, which is a strange translation in general, if it is Hebrew. But regardless, it's calling out to the God of this world, which seems appropriate with the whole movie that we go through, and Lucifer shows up. And anyways, for Mormons, Lucifer is Jesus's brother. So, and we all lived before we lived here now. And, we're spirit children waiting to jump into bodies. It's like a mix of Scientology and Christianity or something. But yeah, we don't have Xenu. I will say that at least. But if you see the hands, we're talking about Typhonian stuff when we're seeing purposeful things here with the hands. If you look at these hands and look at these hands, well, they're the same thing. And Typhonian magic is what? It's chaos magic. And so we're not talking about like the nice Wicca lady down the street. Look, I'm not advocating for any forms of magic. I think it's a bad plan. But this one for sure is not probably the best for your life. So this is the picture that kind of shows that true order of prayer. The women did used to have to veil their faces, but now they don't anymore because they keep changing it. Just like how my grandma. So the reason why I knew my grandma was naked in a bathtub is because I was crying, traumatized, because I was in the poncho and I was naked under there, and people were walking by, and you're exposed, and you're not totally exposed, but you just feel crazy weird. And she goes, "I don't know why you're crying. I had to get naked in a bathtub." So,
Inquiries About Reality will return after this quick commercial break. And we are back, so let's hop right in. Kind of just to relate it to some other stuffs too. I mean, you got the Freemasons, which part of the rituals when you join is that you have to get naked and be in front of everybody.
100%.
And I don't know the exact specifics of that one, but I know Skull and Bones, you specifically have to get naked. You lay in a coffin in front of everybody, and then you divulge your deepest, darkest secrets while everybody stands over you. So again, this continuous thing that you're seeing through multiple different occult practices about this moment of being nude while everybody's standing over you.
Yeah. And they have changed it. I don't know if they used to do breast to breast and cheek to cheek, just like the Masons at the veil and the handshakes. We do the same, but now they don't do the breast to breast anymore because too many old men. Apparently the Mormons can go hard for a long time. Ha ha. Just kidding. Okay. But really it was a problem. So they kind of cut that out, but they do go to the veil. You have to say, you have to do the handshakes to get past the angels and sentinels, and you really stick your hand through like a little curtain and everything and do the whole thing. And they are Masonic. They're almost identical. I think that had a big part to play in why Joseph was, because A, he was banging people's wives, and B, not just their wives. He's like super involved in this whole Masonic issue. He becomes the Master Mason. He's risen to a Master Mason in one day. And then also he's been fingered for being maybe present at the William Morgan disappearance. Good Joe from Vermont was fingered there and, said, yeah, this person had something to do with it. Can I prove that was Joseph Smith? No, I can prove something that I can 100% tell you. Is he married? About the William Morgan affair. Do you know what I'm talking about?
For the listeners that may not know, might as well fill them in too.
Sorry, I went off on that, and I should have said that first. So William Morgan spilled the beans on Masonry, and he was against it and became an anti-Mason and a big leader for the anti-Mason movement. And so Joseph, being a Mason around this time frame, I mean, he probably would have wanted that to stop now, but I can absolutely prove that he married his widow. So in a polygamist ceremony, a lot of times they'll say spiritually only. I'm telling you, there's accounts of her in diaries where she threw a fat fit and showed up in black, which you're not supposed to do when you're not. The first wife can do it. The rest of y'all are supposed to act like he was just your buddy and he died yesterday. You're not supposed to draw attention to that. They were hiding all of that at that point. So yeah, she threw a big fat fit and everybody knew about it. So everybody can check that out about William Morgan's wife, Lucinda Morgan, and he did marry her. And yes, that is who I am related to. So through the Morgans and the Taylors and different people. But I just always am like, well, that's pretty suspect. I mean, come on. But Yeah. He was being tarred and feathered, all kinds of fun things because of this whole situation. And they made him a martyr for it. But also, you know, back then he wasn't just being with young girls. He wasn't just being a polygamist. He's also being with people's wives that are already married currently, like polyamory type stuff, which has never been advocated and is not advocated even in the polygamy sects. So no. When we're talking about, you know, other rituals that we perform also in the temple, this is a sealing mirror. This is where you kneel, and if you're getting married that day, you're going to kneel over this altar right here, and these two mirrors face each other, so it creates that portal look. And it even has this kind of green hue at the end every single time. Every single time it's like this weird greenish hue. And then you say you're going to be married for time and all eternity. This is why a lot of people get sucked into the temple and into Mormonism, is because they promise them you're going to be married for forever, for time and all eternity is what you're promising as you're looking in these mirrors, kneeled over this altar, holding each other's hands, and in your temple clothes, not in a nice wedding dress or anything. No. You wear that little outfit with your fig leaf apron that you got, you know, when Lucifer talked about his apron in the temple as his
Two
powers
things.
and priesthoods. Yes.
One, the green that's in the back of the mirror. Does that almost, like, I know I've brought this up a few times, but it kind of goes into that whole thing with the green and the crossing the abyss.
Mm-hmm.
Like, does that where the whole thing comes in with, like, you'll be married throughout all of time, is because as you're doing it, you're also bringing in this occult view of, like, crossing the abyss while you're also getting married. Is that kind of where that kind of comes into?
It's very interesting that you say that. And also you do this later for dead people, right? You're not only doing this your time for you, you're going to come back and do this again for two dead people, and you're going to take on their name. So are you channeling things in? Are you crossing over? Like what part of this isn't biblical. God says we're not going to be married in heaven. He says it explicitly. Jesus says it. We're going to be like the angels. We won't care about that stuff anymore. And so, but people are sold into it because they want control, right? They want some sort of answer for what lies beyond for everybody. And I have spoken a lot with Nick from Occult Rejects, and he says that the temple ceremony, where I've showed him different things, is very similar to the Gnostic Mass. And so, you know, when you're talking about OTO rituals, you know, obviously they got them from somewhere. People always say, well, but Crowley was way later. I'm like, yeah, well, where'd he get his stuff from? You guys got to read more books.
Nothing new under the sun, as they say.
No. Yeah. And this goes back to, you know, ancient Egypt, in most cases, Babylonian magic, Mythos, all these different cults that, you know, they've been around forever. And so, you know, we're looking at this stuff and we see the outside is very pretty and serene. I'm curious what's inside this box. I mean, it's a pillow top altar probably made to specific King Solomon specs. I'm sure of that. And they'll tell you that the temples are made after King Solomon. They're all about King Solomon. So we know.
Do you think they might put the viewer stones or something in there possibly? Do you think there might be like a connection
I
with
hope they're
that,
not
possibly?
bones. I hope they're not bones in there.
Maybe even bones.
Oh, it creeps me out. But I have no idea because I'm not that high up and I'm just speculating there. But like, obviously it's full of some of the, like it's, I'm sure not empty. You know,
the death thing is especially weird with the mirrors because like things like Judaism, for example, like they cover the mirrors for the first, 2 weeks or something like that after somebody passes away.
Right.
Like most religions, it's about you cover mirrors because the soul will get trapped in them or the person will get trapped in them. So it's like, again, completely opposite. Like, are you trying to trap the soul?
Okay.
Is that what the intention is here?
You just hit something that okay, we're talking speculation at this point. The other stuff I'm showing everyone is historical, but right now this is historical. This is on the temple, one of the original temples in Nauvoo. However, if you know anything about what these mean, when you're talking about an upside down pentagram and an upside down pentacle, and then we've got this ring around it, right? We've got this ring, this seal, like the seals of Solomon that I showed you. So what I often postulate is, are they pulling it down and summoning down and trapping it here? And if they are with those names, like, I'm not saying God can't intervene on our behalf or if you're truly saved or whatever, but if you're not, if you only believe in Mormonism and that's all you have and that's all you know, and you're actually worshiping a false god the whole time, thinking that you're worshiping God, I don't know what happens there. And I also wonder all the time, just like you said, like, is this because anytime you see an upside down pentagram, it's sending the energy down, not up. This isn't about going up at all.
Do they collect skulls by chance?
I don't have any proof of that, but they do dig up dead people. I
theoretically, part of the Skull and Bones episode that we dived into, well, actually, it wasn't Skull and Bones. This was actually when I had another guy named Robbie Marks, who dives like super duper into like biblical occult stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you probably know him. I met him through Nick, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So he dived into this whole thing where he came on the show and was talking about the whole concept of like the talking heads, and he goes back into like ancient religions, even beyond like the Bible view of it. And they talk about this whole idea about basically by possessing somebody's skull, they can never be laid to rest. Like, you have possession of them, like you essentially own them. And going into the old occult practices, like again, before like the biblical view got brought into things with like John the Baptist, for example, having his head, brought onto a plate, it talked about this whole thing about like trapping people by possessing their skulls. So, I mean, if they're doing this thing with the mirrors, where they have both the mirrors open, which obviously is a portal, it's a pass through. Normally you cover the mirrors for that exact reason. And you have that altar that's in the center. Is it possible that there might be a skull specifically in that altar? And it's a matter of anybody who's been a member of that specific church, they're trying to pull them back in so they will forever be part of the church, which could possibly go into the whole thing about you will be married forever, is because you won't ascend to this heaven. You will be here with your loved ones, here trapped in this church in this area forever.
Yep.
Like, and then could that potentially be where the full circle comes in? I mean,
they always say that.
I'm just speculating.
They always say that. Don't you want to be with your family forever? And they have songs like "Families Can Be Together Forever" in Heavenly Father's plan. I always want to be with my own family, and the Lord has shown me how I can. And so, like, all of this stuff, you're super indoctrinated with. Like, I just ripped that out like from 4 years old. Like, this is like stuff that they are telling you for always. Like, you will not be with your family if you do not go do this stuff, and you are going to basically be all alone in outer darkness or wherever you end up, but you won't be with us. And so, when you think about that, and then about the occult meanings behind it, exactly, that has me concerned as well, because I mean, I think there's obviously a way for the Lord to intervene, and even people that see past it and possibly are just there and do it, and then don't really believe. I don't know. I can tell you guys, like, this stuff is heavy, and me and Robbie are currently we're on our 3rd series right now, all about Solomon and the Temple of Solomon. And the Mormons will tell you that is why they have so many temples. They completely will say, yeah, they're after King Solomon. You better believe it. Yep, we're 100% on board with that. Well, that's not always good. Like, you got to look up.
Talk about weird too. Solomon was trapping demons. I mean, could you theoretically use the same magic to trap souls? And then you get into the bigger side of it, where if he wasn't talking to God, he's talking to some other entity. Maybe he's aware of it, maybe he's not. But could he have been tricked or intentionally put into basically collecting souls for an entity into these churches? You know what I mean?
Well,
so he's creating like
and lesser
pockets of souls
of Solomon come directly from him, which are the signs and seals and sigils that I showed you in those parchments. 100%. And so when we get into all of that's exactly where those books come from. And so my allergies are bad today. Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries.
But yeah, exactly. That's the whole thing. The more like, me and Robbie have talked about this, and he's like, this is 100% Zoroastrianism, all like the whole thing. And when people understand better about the symbolism, like, symbolism will be their downfall, right? Like, we see all of this on the temples, like they literally talk just like the Templars about people living on the sun and people living on the moon. And, they have sunstones and moonstones and all of these symbols. And then we've got the phallus and the circle and the phallus and the circle. And they're all built to specific, like exact specs. And they used to have cornerstone ceremonies. And I mean, it is all the same. And then we've got the Big Dipper on there. Like, there's meaning behind each and everything, even down to Moroni with the trumpet. Well, I mean, if you look up all this stuff, like, it really gets down to a lot of occultic meaning. And we have to know that they know more than what they're saying, period. Just like they knew more before now. Like, I mean, they were never Masons before, but now, oh yeah, they're Masons. It's fine. They're squaring the circle right here for you. Like all of this stuff, it has to mean some more than what they're saying. And if you study the old religions, you'll find your answer there, because it 100% is there, And then what do you do when you're there and you get your new magical underwear? You swear death oaths, not as much anymore, since I didn't have to do that because they changed it. My grandma did though, and where they show like slicing, your throat and your belly if you spill a secret. It's like what I'm doing right now. I mean, it's all of it, And so when you're looking at that, and then you see that you're wearing the Masonic. So you're wearing the square and compass, and then the ruler over the belly button. And what's it over every time? It's over openings. Look, this is an opening to your body. Your nipples are. I know this is weird, but I'm just saying. And your umbilicus is. And I often wonder if they put a secret symbol in the crotch part, because these are like your underwear, and you have lots of pairs of these. But you're required to wear these at all times unless you are at the gym, swimming, making more Mormons, but then you got to put them right back on, taking a shower. Yeah. So you're required to have these closest to your skin. Your bra goes over the top because of that. Like, what are they doing here? Are they keeping something open?
I had a buddy who was a Mormon in high school, and I used to like hang out at his house and spend the night over there and all the time. And he literally used to wear one of these under there, and I never like understood it. And I tried to ask him about it. He'd just be like, "Oh, it's just what I do. We're Mormons." And he didn't really like explain it at all. No. So even like speaking from like personal experience from like a Mormon living out in Michigan, like you're still seeing this.
You can't. Yeah, they won't divulge it, and it's very similar to the Jewish. And even older than Jewish, like if you go way back, these are like prayer undergarments that a lot of different cultures wore. And you can look it up. Like me and Robbie have talked about that. There's many that have this same type of situation. So, you look at this stuff, and this has nothing to do with God. Like it just doesn't. And that's my biggest problem with this. Like if you want to be a magical woo-woo sect and you want to do whatever you want to do, go do it, but stop taking dead people with you, for heaven's sakes. And also, like, if you could, stop telling lies about it. But then you also have to wonder, this top upper echelon uses the Goyim, and they're the ones that FamilySearch.org pours into 23andMe. It pours into Ancestry.com. There is no any of those or genealogy websites without the Mormon Church. It was set up by the Mormons with the help of the CIA, retrieving the IBM cards from the Holocaust, period. And it was all done at Hughes Dynamics with the name of William Gay, and he was the one that helped computerize it. And I'm telling you guys, like, they have everyone's. It isn't just if you're a Mormon. No. And if you go on their site, this is a huge mountain they blew the side of a mountain out of to keep paperwork in. Are you kidding me? They have armed guards here. Like armed guards.
That looks like it's meant to last through an apocalypse.
Exactly.
Like, that reminds me of like the seed bank they have in what is it, Antarctica or something like that?
And speaking of that, well, there's one road in and one road out, and it's completely locked down. And speaking of the seed bank, I mean, I'm sure if you know about that who's the number one farm owner in America?
Church of Latter-day Saints.
They're second only to Bill Gates. But Bill Gates is with Microsoft is their number one shareholding. And this is constant time and time again. Who's the money guy? Who's the money manager for Elon Musk? It's Jared Birchall. He's a Mormon. Like, why the hell are all these Mormons constantly showing up all the time? Why? And also this is Elon's Jared Birchall, and he doesn't even have the credentials to have that position. So where did they meet? At the Boring Company. How did they meet? Digging holes together. Yeah.
I was about to say the Boring Company, they're already going underground.
Exactly. That I'm going to stop sharing right there because we're going to chat about this now. But yeah, it's exactly that. Like all of this, when you're looking at these things, I mean, there's a bigger answer behind every single one of them. And by the way, when we talk about the Mormon Mafia with Howard Hughes, they weren't his nursemaids. That's ridiculous. These people were running his company and on the board of the Summa Corporation running his company. They just cover it up with that. And then, Elon's just the new Howard Hughes. He's just the new puppet. That's all it is.
It's just new characters, new archetypes. That's what it comes down to. I mean, everybody ends up playing the same roles, but hold on tight, guys. We'll be right back after this brief commercial break. And now back to the show. Speaking of archetypes, actually, I've been wanting to bring this up a couple different times on the show, and I was looking for a good opportunity.
No, you're good.
So I talked to somebody who was involved with the Freemasons a long time ago about the Garden of Eden story, as far as like how they kind of portray Lucifer in the Garden of Eden story. You mentioned the whole fact that Lucifer is viewed as God's brother.
Yep.
So I would love to kind of hear the Mormon background to possibly like the origin story / the Eden story to kind of see how it correlates with like the Freemason perspective.
It's totally replicated. Yeah. It's, Jesus and Lucifer are up in heaven and they're brothers and, they're ones of God's sons and they're the elect and they're fighting over how they're going to handle the posterity here with these new creations, us humans. And, Lucifer wants to force the will. Jesus wants to give the will. And so they have this war in heaven and a third of the angels fall. And, they believe in all that is exactly the same. And with that, Lucifer fell and Jesus won. And like I said, we all existed in a premortal existence and were part of this war. And if you were elect and good in this war, then you're white. But if you were a fence sitter and you were unsure which side to join, you became a black person. And I'm not kidding. And so this is their beliefs about how it's not the mark of Cain. The mark of Cain is only for the brown people. This is only for the black people. And they were so wonderful about this that even Brigham Young was like, if you even have the one drop rule, you could not get the priesthood until 1978 when they forced it. So yeah, pretty much forced it with all the changes with everything with, they were trying to push equal rights and all that stuff at that very point. And it was going to get to the point where they came in and confiscated things because they wouldn't play. But they back a lot with Germany. I have quite a few shows about Hitler and the Mormons and how that was handled and who supported who and where that money was going, let alone the Dulles brothers and the amount of integration of the CIA and other three-letter agencies with the Mormons. It's actually crazy. So.
And just out of curiosity, going into the Garden of Eden story, so what I've heard from a lot of like Freemasons is they kind of portray Lucifer as being not necessarily like the evil snake, how Christians kind of view it, but rather that it's like a turned perspective that, God is trying to keep information from you. And this guy over here isn't a bad character. He just wants to give you this information.
Right.
Is that kind of how they portray it with the Mormons too? That it's not necessarily that he's this bad character. It's more of like both are gray rather than black and white.
He's still considered bad, but in the actual ceremony itself, he has the apron on and it's black for him instead of fig leaf. And Adam looks at him and says, "Oh, what's that?" And he says, "This is a sign of my powers and priesthoods." And then he starts talking crazy about money and all this stuff. And like, he's trying to like give the wisdom to Adam and Adam's confused. And it's all the same there. Like 100%, Mormons are Masons, whether they realize it or not, but they are initiating into that same thing. And that was why when I came out of Mormonism, why I started researching so hard, trying to figure out like, what do I need to clean up in my spiritual path? Like, I've done some things that are not good. This is not good. I don't want anything to do with this. And that's why I feel so angry at them. And I do divulge the things that most Mormons won't divulge because I was lied to. Screw you guys. Like, no way. No, you don't get to do that to people. I'm not some damn goyim. No way. You're the goyim now because I'm going to spill all your secrets. And also they give you a second name. And who else does that, right? That's done in magical orders. Why do they do that? If they know your magical name and you think that it's sacred and you obey by it and don't divulge it, then they can use it to control your ass. So, it's just, yeah, it's all devious except for the 1%. And everybody else that's nice in the middle is like, that lady's a crazy person. And I'm like, look, you're being used. Like, they are using you like toilet paper, literally. Like, they don't care about you. I mean, these upper echelon people, and they're very New World Order. I mean, very. And, they've been involved in all kinds of things with that, including 2020, where they asked everyone to be a good global citizen. And yes, that is the wordage. And go get that cure because they pushed it hard. They are super involved with pharmaceuticals. They have so many labs and pharmaceuticals. They're up to their eyeballs in so many things. And it's not benevolence, like, honestly. I mean,
you talk about the symbolism things of stuff too, and you're talking about like possibly there being other symbols that are put like within inside the underwear. I mean, a lot of people have obviously talked about like the graphite. They've talked about a bunch of different stuff when it comes to the whole like jab and stuff like that. But I don't know if anybody's ever thrown this theory. I'm sure somebody has at some point. I just can't throw a name offhand. But considering how microscopic you can make things on like microchips, like you start looking at those things under like a microscope and you realize that there's like these symbols on them that are so small that there is no possible way that a human hand or anything could have possibly made them. I mean, talk about the whole idea about like letting something in, the whole like ritual of like the threshold ritual, that you don't realize it, but you're letting something in. And that little something that you let in, as stupid as it sounds, could have been like a microscopic little tiny symbol. And it may not be still, quote, like in your body, like graphite doing some crazy shit. But on the flip side of it, it was a matter of letting something in and letting it pass through you. But now, because you did that, now you have given something the right to be able to come in and enter you. Yep. So it's like a little bit of a different view on it. And again, I'm sure somebody's thrown the theory, but just like symbolism, microscopic symbolism that could have been within the jabs, like little tiny symbols.
Right. And not only that, but like when you're talking about Mormonism, I mean, the symbols on their garments, you're supposed to cut them out and burn them when it's time to throw them away. Like, you're talking about magic every which way it passes. And then on top of it, like you're talking about, like, we have no clue. And they're very into transhumanism. They're very into living forever. They, their alignment with certain things is very interesting. We'll leave it that way. But, they're not just playing around. I mean, the prophet's 100 years old. And I think they figured a lot of things out. The Mi'kmaq people, or the Micmac, they like to be called Mi'kmaq now. But, they talk about these copper scrolls and that the Mormons have some of them. And obviously the Mormons have a pretty big piece to the puzzle for them to be able to start like inking into like mainstream with like the church. Like the Catholic Church used to just ignore them, like, they're just nuts, leave them alone, like whatever, to the Mormons. And then all of a sudden now in 2018, they were able to build their temple right down the street from the Vatican. Well, that was given permissions, and let alone the picture op that they took with him shaking St. Peter's hand. And it has the key with the keys to the kingdom. They're always talking about the keys. And I do believe that they have some very important secret knowledge in that top upper echelon. 100% they do. They have the Order of Enoch. I mean, they just, they know some stuff. There's no way. But not the regular people, not your nice neighbor down the street,
I mean, it could even be like semi-symbolic of the fact that, like, obviously they're dealing a lot with the keys of Solomon. So talking about the key symbolism, obviously there's key symbolism within a cult anyways, but them constantly having the key and talking about the keys of Solomon, I wonder if it's almost like they're a cult way of saying, like, we possess the keys to the key of Solomon. Like, we're the only group that knows how to accurately use the keys of Solomon. And that's what they try to like symbolically say with all of this symbolism, is like, we're the group that knows how this works.
There is this,
which again, going into the reverse thing about trapping souls with the mirrors and everything, theoretically, the way I see magic works, I feel like most things would be that it can work both ways. So if you're able to trap demons entities, then why wouldn't you be able to also trap and keep human souls?
Right. Well, and they say, I have another book and I think it's upstairs, but it literally has multiple quotes about masonry from older prophets and stuff saying they are the only people that possess the true keys of masonry, that they've figured it out.
And I mean, just to bring in another weird tie that may even come back to the whole like skinwalker thing. I was listening to something recently that was talking about like the Lesser Key of Solomon, or not the Lesser Key of Solomon, but Solomon from the perspective of like Muslim and Islam. And it was talking about like the whole jinn aspect of things, that, you know, when they're talking about the Key of Solomon story, they're not calling him demons, they're calling him jinn.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start getting into the idea of jinn, where they supposedly have these like abilities to enter like pocket dimensions. They have the ability to either be good or bad. They manipulate information, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets into this whole thing about like, all right, so you have this thing that's quote already altering pocket dimensions, has this ability. So is this another key to the whole idea with Skinwalker Ranch, is that these things that, you know, the Islam refers to as the jinn, you know, they're actually is what they're trying to communicate and get in contact with and open up these pocket rift dimensions too, is the jinn that we speak of.
Right.
Because I mean,
I'm
you know, some people
with...
might see jinn and demons as the same thing, but I think that there's a possibility that they could potentially be two different things that just through retelling of stories, they kind of got their lore kind of blended together. But it does seem like there's still these like hard lining dividing factors between the two.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, like I said, these people that have seemed to have certain knowledge have been all about stopping ripping holes in the ether. And even occultists do. Even occultists talk, like even Steiner talks about like, hey, we got to cut this out. Like, we got to stop blowing shit up. Like literally all these people are constantly talking like this. And it's because, I mean, they literally oftentimes quote that there are things that come back, right? Hughes did. I mean, there's a lot of lore between that, and it doesn't matter what you want to call them. Dee called them angels, but they were liars. He said so. And so at the end of the day, when they started doing, you know, things that weren't very benevolent, nothing good came of that for them. Like Edward Kelly falls out a window and dies of an infection with broken legs. And, you know, Dee's whole family almost dies around him except one daughter. And he has to raise Edward Kelly's son. Like none of this stuff is great. They didn't get some benevolent thing for all this crap. Jack Parsons blows himself up and Crowley died miserable too. And so did Hughes. You know, none of them die great. Not a one. It's just sad. You know, so.
I mean, the other things on the other side can trick you just as easy. Like people tend to forget that you think that these people are like master occultists, and maybe from our perspective they are, but on the other side, it's like these beings, these entities that they're dealing with, like they live and breathe these words that you're trying to understand. So, you know, you think that you're summoning them, but realistically, like they might be summoning you in a certain extent, you know, like
absolutely.
You think you're using them, but they're actually the ones using you. And eventually it ends up taking that toll. And that's usually what you hear about with a lot of this stuff. I mean, you see it with celebrities, you see it with all these people that sell their souls, make contact. It's like, yes, you get all that you want, but you start seeing this degrading that eventually happens. And then, you know, eventually they're going to come and they're going to take what they want. The whole reason they gave you what they want is because they're going to get something in return. And people tend to forget that.
Yes.
And the whole idea of selling your soul, I don't think you're actually able to sell your soul. I think it's a matter of they trick you into thinking that your soul is damned and sold. So you live the rest of your life then damning your soul. It was never sold to them or became part of them. That's something that they can't own. But it's a matter of they trick you into thinking that it's sold so that you end up doing enough sin to just send it there anyways.
Well,
so it's just manipulation.
We are supposed to, you know, we are the ones that will judge the fallen angels in the end. It says so. You know, humans, they hate us in general because we're like the crappy little brother that they didn't want to hail to. And then on top of it, they've got to answer to us at some point. So yeah, they're overly not excited about who we are in general. So when people are like, oh, but the angels, I'm like, listen, angels maybe can come help people sometimes, but that's a God thing. And that's not a you thing. You're not controlling an angel to do anything. I don't care how much you pray to him, unless it's sent by God. You're not going to get through that. And I mean, just pray to God and he'll take care of it. Like, we don't think like he does. He says it like a bajillion times. I mean, if people would just, you know, try to build a relationship with God and throw religion away, they'd probably be way better off, in my opinion. But
yeah, because I mean, honestly, a lot of this stuff has been like misconstrued through the years due to that. Like, I'm glad that there's this like new rise that's kind of starting to come through where it's not necessarily people saying I'm specifically part of this group, but, you know, I just read the words of the Bible. I, you know, view the words of the Bible. I live the words of the Bible, and I don't need to be part of any specific group.
Right.
You know, like it's kind of like the like New Age Christian movement in a way, that a lot of these New Age Christian groups aren't necessarily like saying like, oh yeah, we're necessarily part of this group. It's more so like they're just entertaining the words, but because of that, they're able to get into other things that normal, you know, churches wouldn't talk about. That's when they can get into like the fallen angels, the Nephilim, you know, spiritual warfare, all of this type of stuff that normal churches just completely side scoot, which in my opinion is some of the most important stuff, because it's just like the whole light work, dark work thing. Like, everybody wants to work on the light and they don't want to work in the dark, but at the end of the day, it's like you're never going to fully understand the light unless you've been able to understand the dark on top of it. So, you know, you don't have to become part of the dark, but you still need to understand the dark in order to be able to counterbalance it.
Because you're tricked. So, look at me. Look at it. People say all the time, well, you study all this scary stuff now. I'm like, yeah, you want to know why? Because I got tricked into doing some really scary stuff. Like, I don't want that to ever happen to me again. Screw that. No, thank you. That's a big no, thank you. And I'm going to expose it for what it is, you know, because if I can get people, even one or two people, which I know I've reached at least that, because I've had people tell me like all the scoffing in the world is worth it if I get to the few people that God wants me to get, you know, like, hey, you're supposed to help people. You're supposed to gather your brothers and sisters. We're supposed to do all this stuff for one another, because the one thing that really wasn't hung on the cross was what Jesus said, love one another. And we can't figure that out. Like, you know, it's simple, but it's not, because they make it impossible. And why do they make it impossible? Because they know that's the best thing. So,
hey, some people think blunt force is the way to take something out, but at the end of the day, I mean, if you can just make a chink in the armor, it's just starting to weaken the broader picture of things. And in all fairness, it's like when you start working at those little spots and you start chinking away the armor, it ends up, you know, taking it down for good rather than just making a big blast at it and making it so it's able to stand back up again. So, I mean,
yes,
you know, it's one of those things that it's like, is if you're making the difference, that's all that really matters. And you're speaking to the people that need to hear it, because the people that, you know, you can't reach, they're probably some of the people that can't be saved anyways. It's, you know, with a lot of this stuff that we talk about in general, with like a lot of the conspiracies and stuff, it's kind of like after, you know, the whole, you know, jab thing, that the people that needed to hear the message and wanted to hear the message are now here with us. They're aware of it. But the people that were going to sleep forever are still going to continue sleeping forever. So, you know, you may end up taking some ridicule in turn, but in the long run, even if you just save 5 people, I mean, those are the people that needed to hear it. And that's what was really important.
Absolutely. And we, you know, I always tell people, don't black pill people, but do plant little seeds, because I was one of those people. You couldn't have told me years ago that the little seeds my mom planted would make any damn bit of difference, but they did, you know? And so, I mean, she saved her whole family, whole family. All my posterity is out of Mormonism. She saved my brother and his daughter and me. Like, she saved all of us out. And I'm sure at the time she didn't feel like she was going to be able to do anything with it, because we all just thought she was kind of crazy, you know? And so, yeah, you never know.
Inquiries of Our Reality will be right back after this brief commercial break, so stay tuned. And now back to the show. So, I guess kind of starting to wrap up towards the end, and I would definitely love to go for a round 2, because we're almost approaching 2 hours, and I definitely want to at least have another round where we come back and we talk about some of your like first person perspective going through some of this different stuff and everything, but at least laying down the groundwork. I feel like this was a pretty good first session on this stuff.
Yeah, so, you have to have that so that people know like what the heck we're even talking about, because if we go into like the repercussions of things, it doesn't make any sense without kind of knowing what's up. So
Yeah, so we'll have to set that one up hopefully sooner rather than later, so that we can get people listening for that one on round 2.
Awesome.
And actually, for anybody that's listening to this, it'll be an unrelated topic, but this will be the first of the extended episodes that you guys will be able to go and catch over on the Patreon. So if anybody's interested in hearing that extended conversation, you guys will be able to hear it over there. But wrapping up this show, at least, I always like to end the show with some words of wisdom. So if there was any words of wisdom that you might want to bestow on the listeners today, other than what you've already been, of course, telling them, what might might it be?
I think your point about definitely knowing, the darkness, you don't have to be its best friend, but you do need to know what dangers you face, or what is danger if you had no idea what danger is, right? You're going to pick up a snake if you didn't know a bit. So, I mean, we have to know that. And I think that, we all just have to be better about trying to love one another. I think, forgiveness and offensiveness, like, we're not supposed to be easily offended as Christians. We're supposed to let it kind of, brush it off, pick yourself up. I'm not saying I'm perfect in that. I get mad in the moment, but try again the next day or whatever, because they're really trying to split families completely up at this point. And I have a personal story with that. And I just think that's really important for people to hear. So don't let it split your families up. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And if anybody wanted to come and find your podcast, any of the great information that you're putting out there, or they might even want to contact you, where can people come and find you across the internet?
Absolutely. I'm Heidi Luv. I'm the Unfiltered Rise. I'm everywhere podcasts are served. I do have my own website, unfilteredrisepodcast.com. And I do lots of little extra shows and 2 extra shows a month for my Patreon, because I just do it that way. So you get a little more extra time with me if you want to see that.
Well, I really appreciate you making the time to come on today. I really appreciate you sharing some of your stories and some of your research. I feel like you've brought a lot of light to this topic for a lot of people, and just a lot of respect for you for coming out, talking about all of this type of stuff, and not being scared of the repercussions, because, somebody needs to be out here talking about this, and I'm glad that it's you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on.
If anyone would like to get in touch with me for any reason whatsoever, you guys can do so through email, which is inquiriesofourrealitypodcast@outlook.com, or through social media. Instagram and Facebook are the 2 that I'm the most active on. Or you guys can also get a hold of me through the submission form, which is available up at the top of the link tree. And the last way you guys can get a hold of me is through the hotline. You guys can text or call that 24/7. That number is 313-364-1551. And every single thing that I mentioned is all available off of the link tree, which is available down in that show description. And with that, hope you guys enjoyed the conversation. Hope today's show has connected some dots in your own reality. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.
Reality isn't what it seems. I'm Dr. D's taking aboard a craft with a tractor beam. Is life a simulation or an astral dream? Aliens travel through black holes in different galaxies. Life is a bizarre odyssey, with the mic talking about philosophy. Well, Bigfoot is stalking campers as a Wendigo walks through the woods of sharpened antlers, using a Ouija board to talk to the dead like a necromancer. There's so many questions and not enough answers. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to Inquiries of Our Reality. So if you're interested in mysteries and abnormalities, tune in and listen to